Why prednisone withdrawal may sometimes be as dangerous as the treatment itself. So, this week, I was asked by somebody in the Prednisone Warriors with Dr. Megan group what would happen if they were on prednisone and they had withdrawals. And so I'm here today to answer that question. What is adrenal insufficiency, and what does it feel like? What should we look out for, and why do we care? So I'm basing this off of an article from the European Journal of Internal Medicine, and I didn't make up that title. I just substituted prednisone for glucocorticoid. Why treatment with prednisone can be as dangerous. The withdrawal from prednisone can be as dangerous as the treatment itself. So, in this article, I'm going to point out the important parts and translate it from medicalese into more simple language for you. First of all, what is adrenal anything? Why do we even care about the adrenal system? So first of all, prednisone is a similar structure to your body's hormone cortisol. And cortisol is made by this cute little organ right here in the adrenal cortex. See that? Cortisol. So your body, I'm not going to make you learn all this fancy stuff that we had to learn, but basically this is your brain, and it talks to your pituitary, which talks to your adrenal gland, which is on top of your kidney. And all of that is being interfered with. Prednisone is saying, no, brain, you're not talking to my kidneys, right above my kidneys. And so when that happens, it turns off your adrenal gland from making cortisol. Why do we care if we're making cortisol or not? Well, cortisol is our stress hormone. So when anything stressful happens, say you're cut off in traffic, or you found out that somebody you love died, or you get fired from your job, or you get really sick. Lots of ways your body can be stressed. You need cortisol to deal with that stress, to deal with the high blood pressure and all of the terrible things that happen when you're stressed out. The cortisol has to kick in, or you can die. You can go into shock, and that's called adrenal crisis. So this is the reason you never, ever, ever, ever stop taking prednisone without slowly tapering it off and following your doctor's orders. It can literally kill you. It can put your body into adrenal crisis, shock, like zero blood pressure, you die. And you don't want that. So always slowly go off prednisone. Never stop taking it suddenly. So now that we've covered why we care about cortisol and the adrenal system, what does it look like? What is adrenal insufficiency? So a lot of people might have heard of adrenal fatigue. That is not this. Adrenal insufficiency is when your adrenal gland is not working. Adrenal fatigue might be something like your body's not as receptive to cortisol as it used to be, and so you feel tired all the time. That can happen in very stressed out people who aren't on prednisone. That's a totally different thing. We're talking about adrenal insufficiency, and this is caused by the drug prednisone or one of its sister drugs like hydrocortisone or dexamethasone. So once it's caused this damage, basically, to your signaling system, it won't make cortisol at all until it remembers to do so. So basically, you need to give it time. That's why you go down slowly, is you need to give your adrenal system time to kick back into gear. What does it feel like when you are having adrenal insufficiency? I'm going to read this directly from the article. I'm not making it up. It says, fatigue, loss of energy, hypoglycemia, that means low blood sugar. Hypotonia, that means like you're not very strong. Reduced strength, also not very strong. Nausea, muscle pain, sleep disturbance, and weight changes. So these basically mean you feel like you got hit by a bus. You feel like you have the flu. You feel terrible. So essentially what everybody needs to look out for when they're taking prednisone is, do you feel that way? Even if you're still on it, do you feel any of those things? And if so, you might be having a little bit of adrenal insufficiency. So based on that, everybody who's been on any dose of prednisone, even a small dose, even for a short amount of time, should be looking out for adrenal insufficiency symptoms. There's nobody who is completely exempt. It can happen to anyone at any time, at any dose. You could have just taken 3 days worth and it could cause adrenal insufficiency. You could just have used inhaled steroids like people with asthma use. You could have just used topical steroids like people with rashes like eczema would use. They can cause adrenal insufficiency. And so always be looking out for it and always be talking to your doctor. If you're feeling unwell, then you need to point it out. So who actually has this happen? Well, according to that article, anywhere from 50 to 100% of people have adrenal insufficiency the next day after taking prednisone. Basically, everyone can get it. Now, how many people have it a year later? Not as many. It's more like 3%. 3% of people. So like 1 in 30 people who take prednisone can still be feeling the effects a year later. Like they can still feel exhausted, with joint pain, with muscle pain, with like less grip strength, all of those things, even a year later. That's a possibility. Or it can be even longer, it says in the article. So what do you do if that's you? If you're feeling completely run over by a bus because you took prednisone? Well, you need to talk to your doctor. That's the number one thing. We always talk to our doctor first. Tell them how you're feeling. Next, you might be needing to be placed on a replacement because your body's not doing what it's supposed to. So you might need to go back on prednisone, or you might need to go on its sister, hydrocortisone. Hydrocortisone looks a little bit more like cortisol to your body, so it's a little closer to your natural hormone. And the hard part about it is it's taken several times a day. But you need to have supplementation. Basically, you've got to go back. I know that's like the worst news ever, but it's vital because adrenal insufficiency can kill you. There are adrenal insufficiency support groups out there for people who legitimately have adrenal insufficiency. And are people on prednisone the only people who get it? No. People have other kinds. So prednisone causes the adrenal insufficiency in this kind, and so they call that a secondary adrenal insufficiency. There are primary adrenal insufficiencies as well for people who like actually physically lost the adrenal gland or had an autoimmune attack on their adrenal gland. There are lots of reasons, like one of them is called Addison's disease. But basically, they have it because it's a physical thing. Like there's physically not an adrenal gland making cortisol. Whereas people who took prednisone, it was drug-induced. That's what caused it. So that's called secondary adrenal insufficiency. So you should, if you are experiencing this, you should check out those support groups. They are full of really good information and support. And then for those of you who do have adrenal insufficiency, my friend at Adrenal Alternatives interviewed me this week, and it was really exciting. She said she wanted to feature me in their magazine, and I just am so excited about what they're doing at Adrenal Alternatives. It sounds like they're recommending like supplements or something in place of adrenal hormones, but that's not it at all. They're talking about instead of taking a pill 4 times a day to replace your adrenal hormones, to have a pump, like an insulin pump. So, you know, people who have diabetes, they have a little pump and they just wear it on their hip, and it slowly drips the insulin in throughout the day, and then it gives them a big bolus after their meals. Well, the same thing kind of needs to happen for people with adrenal insufficiency. They need a slow amount of cortisol dripping into their body throughout the day and then big boosts during the stressful times of day. And so wouldn't that be awesome if there was a cortisol pump? So she is helping America adopt what Europe and other countries are already doing, which is using pumps just like insulin pumps for adrenal insufficient patients. So I think that's so exciting, and like it's just like the top of science, and I'm thrilled. So if you have adrenal insufficiency, check out Adrenal Alternatives. And I am excited to cover this topic. Next week, we will go more in depth about the treatment. So talk to you next week. Signing off as Dr. Megan, your prednisone pharmacist.